feel the crunch of twig and branch underneath your feet.
That's nature.
Hear those birds?
Wonderful.
It's so good to get some fresh air and just hang out, just the two of us of the three triplets.
Yeah, it's kind of become a thing between us.
It's not that I don't like Artemis.
No, the
He's
times we spend
triplet.
with him are great. Yeah.
But, I mean, he just talks so much. He's like everything. It's the Artemis show constantly.
And, like, in certain social situations, I like the way he talks way more than, like, at a restaurant or something, I don't have to worry about dealing with waiters and waitresses. Artemis is on it. He's talking. Mm-hmm. I can focus on the menu.
Yeah, I mean, and sometimes when it's just you and me and we're dealing with someone, there can be an awkward silence, there can be a weird moment, but Artemis always fills this stuff right up.
Absolutely.
He's a great part of the team, but it's just a little alone time. Yeah, I mean, I don't need to justify myself to you. You get it more than anyone else in the world.
You remember last time I was telling you about kind of the history of libraries?
Is that a bear cub? Yeah, I do remember that, but no, is that a bear cub?
Oh my god.
Oh, there's the mom.
Okay.
We can just go the other way.
Yeah, there was a fork a little bit back.
Don't want to spook them. I want to respect it. They live here, you know? We're just visitors.
Yeah, it's their home. Yeah, after last time, I got to thinking, like, librarians and libraries do so much to meet the needs of people, but, like, how do they meet their needs, you know?
Yeah, librarians give, but you can't pour from an empty cup, librarians.
So, yeah, I was kind of talking about how it's throughout the 1800s and 1900s is when libraries, as we know them, came to be in America, and it was sort of a quiet little revolution, but at the same time, there was another kind of quiet revolution going on, which was that women were moving into the workforce, and they were also becoming able to go to school and get educated. Early on in library history, it was kind of thought that women's impressionable minds had to be protected from libraries and some of the less delicate information contained in there.
Really?
Yeah, that was extremely messed up.
So recent, too. It's just fucking weird.
But then with this, like, booming new creation of libraries around the country and this sort of excess of women who had received education, a lot of women entered into libraries. So along with, like, nursing and teaching, librarianship became seen as feminine. And this actually had some kind of, like, positive effects on library culture, even though it was based on sort of stereotypes of what women were like. Libraries began to be seen as places of hospitality, like sort of warm and welcoming environments that were meant to be of service to the public. A place where people come in and are welcomed with kindness and given individual attention about their needs and help accessing what they needed to access. A place kind of like a well-kept home where people are catered to, and people thought women were sort of naturally more able to do this.
Oh, that's such a trip, because I love libraries, and I love sort of that aspect and theory and heart behind libraries.
Yeah.
But then to essentialize that to people who are being, like, disenfranchised from participation in society, that's a weird thing to chew on. But also, then it also embeds this sort of, like, liberatory feminism within the library socialists movement, in a sense. Like, the legacy of freedom and the legacy of domination are both so present in the sort of, like, genesis of librarianship.
And then, like, as more women entered librarianship, the kind of status of librarianship declined as a prestigious position in society.
Oh, yeah, because when women enter a field of work, the wages of that field tend to stay stagnant or go down, right? Like, it's one of the cultural impacts of patriarchy.
That's exactly what happened. So you have all these, like, highly educated women entering this field, but being paid low wages in general, and also lower wages than the men who were working in the same field. And the women also had very little opportunity for advancement to the kind of, like, really prestigious positions in the library world, the heads of big libraries or just upper management and those kinds of things, because the few men who did enter librarianship tended to pass over all the women for the good spots. So you had all these well-educated women in the field who are not getting their needs met, you know, either not getting enough wages, but also just not getting their need for equality and dignity and respect met in the workplace. And so this leads directly into the birth of the library union movement, which in America happened in 1917.
Oh, 1917. Do you know what happened in October that year?
Yeah, of course.
That's when Thelonious Monk was born.
What a great jazz pianist.
And, you know, since you and me and Artemis joined that Thelonious Monk fan club, I feel like I've learned a lot about his life and his legacy, and obviously his incomparable piano jazz music.
But yeah, it's not the only thing that happened that year. Actually, some women, librarians in this case, banded together to leverage their collective power as workers to demand concessions from their bosses. And the New York Public Library Union was formed in May of 1917. And its membership was largely dominated by women, and its first executive board was 100% women. After the union in New York was formed, it was quickly followed by library unions being formed in Philadelphia, Boston, and Washington, D.C. And these library unions were all being kind of criticized as seditious, as all unions at the time were being criticized as seditious, but also as unfeminine and against the library spirit because they were too focused on themselves and not on service. So it's taking these actually good values, this positive side of cultural femininity is being associated with libraries, but then it's being turned around and used as a stick to beat these women who are asking for equal treatment in the workplace, that positions in libraries should be given out not on the basis of sex but on the basis of ability, and that there should be equal pay for equal work between men and women librarians. One of the reasons the Boston Library Union was formed, again largely by women, was in response to a process of quote, professionalization that was threatening to have women who'd worked their entire lives to decent positions in the library threatened with unemployment, as it was being considered to replace them all with a batch of mostly male college graduates. The Boston Herald at the time said, "These girls consider themselves as well equipped to carry on the work as any college graduate."
Was that meant as a compliment at the time?
I don't know. I didn't read the whole article, but I kind of doubt it. So these were just like some kind of like real salt of the earth, rabble-rousing unions. The one exception being the Washington, D.C. Library Union, which as I was reading about this seemed like it was trying to kind of distinguish itself. It was in favor of professionalism. It was kind of like the I'm not like the other library unions library union. So this is kind of a real tension in the library world because a lot of librarians saw themselves as professionals, and so they didn't do that union thing. That's what like grimy blue-collar workers were doing. So there's all this tensions, and it kind of like comes to a head at the 41st Annual American Library Association Conference in New Jersey in June 1919. The conference kind of, starts off slow. There's some like speeches about libraries and moderation and higher principles and all that. And then this guy named George Bowerman takes the stage and does this fiery speech calling out librarians for their anti-union fetishism and calling for sympathy and better service to the laboring classes. And this kind of really angers the professionalists at the conference who don't want to be associated with those elements. And next up is Maud Malone from the New York Union, and she launches into a direct attack of professionalism, calling it a very undemocratic idea that's being used to distinguish librarians from the masses and kind of place them above the masses. She's making a critique of hierarchy here and saying that librarians are, quote, connected intimately with the labor movement because the workers furnish the greater proportion of the reading public, and quote, that after all this talk of professionals, you know that librarians are actually workers. And then she went on to accuse the library establishment of perpetuating discriminatory hiring and promotional practices on the basis of sex and calling for equal pay for equal work. So Maud and the other women from the New York Union try multiple times to raise this issue at the conference and kind of keep getting nowhere. So eventually they force a vote by the full General Assembly on a resolution which read, "Be it resolved that we are against this system of removing women without reason and are in favor of opening all positions in library work from the Librarian of Congress down to that of page to men and women equally and for equal pay." Kind of just like an amazing bit of determination from this library union, but unfortunately the resolution was completely crushed in a vote, 121 to 1. Only a single person voting in favor of it.
Wow, that's a crazy bit of history there, this library union stuff. I never even would have thought to look that up.
And like really the movements died out after that. There's some more library union activity in the 30s. It was a lot more male-centered that time, part of larger union movements that were going on. And then it kind of died out again until there was another revival in the 60s and 70s, this time dovetailing with the feminist movements of the time, so they were a bit better. But again, kind of dying out. And honestly, since then, it seems like there's been very little library union movement. This attitude of professionalism is still a major part of library culture, and only something like 15% of libraries in the United States are part of any kind of union.
Well, you know how I was talking recently about how I've decided to start identifying as a library socialist? And
yeah.
that I was hoping to take steps towards building a more utopian society based on the principles of usufruct, the irreducible minimum, and complementarity, and that we could have a society that globally works on a type of library lending system of various kinds. And that me and some friends of mine have started a reading group about it, and we're serious about sort of bringing it through. Well, that anecdote, that historical example makes me think, and I've never thought this before, that maybe one of the major steps, both as a narrative victory but also as a mechanistic victory, is creating a global union of librarians.
Definitely. Well, especially because the role of librarians is going to need to be so vastly expanded in this new society to not just help give people access to the information that's in books, but to all the services, most services you'd be able to get through various libraries of kinds. So really a librarian union, yeah, it really does seem like it would be absolutely necessary.
Hey, this looks like a good spot to set up for that picnic that we were talking about.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I brought a nice little blanket, and we could just lay out this whole spread. It's going to be delicious.
I can finally crack this thermos full of wine.
Oh, nice.
Oh, I'm such a lush. I'm just kidding. But I mean, let's definitely drink the wine. I'm just joking about being a lush.
Oh, good.
I drink
when you said you were
responsibly.
kidding, I thought, oh no, did he just bring juice? Because I was looking forward to that one.
Oh, no, it's wine. I was just joking about whether or not it's a problem for me. It's not.
Whew. I mean, that it's not a problem for you, but also, it is wine.
You know who it's a problem for? It's Artemis, some of the time.
You just need someone to tell him you've had enough for the night, Artemis. He just sometimes has trouble knowing for himself.
And that's where we come in.
I hope there won't be too many mosquitoes around here, but...
Oh, well, Grandpa always said a few bug bites means you had a good time.
Yeah, that never made sense to me.
No,
but,
I didn't. I was like, what the yeah. Well, it's an okay phrase, I guess.
Yeah, I guess I kind of get it. I shouldn't be like, I don't get it at all. I understand what he's saying.
Like bumps on the road. And
yeah. All right, well, let's pour some wine into these little plastic cups. And you want a plastic cup? Cheers.
Cheers. Here's to respecting the historical struggle of librarians and the hope that one day they shall be fully liberated, as all of us are, in one big library.
Oh, baby. Such good wine.
Oh, yeah. After a hard hike like that,
Whew.
a little wine
That's all I gotta say.
goes down good. But make sure to drink water, too. It's dehydrating.